let's put the politicians up front. But I'm more and more wondering why you want to be a region over here. We had the politicians up front. Last week I did a presentation at the Vlaamnet. I don't know if you know what the Vlaamnet is, but there are the 7 provinces next to the border region. 3 from the Netherlands, Limburg, Brabant, Zeeland. 4 from Flanders, Limburg, Belgium, Limburg, Antwerp, East and West Flanders. And they didn't know what to do together. In fact, the representative of the province of Limburg, Dutch Limburg, didn't want to cooperate altogether. And I discovered a little row between Herman Reinders, the gouverneur from Belgium, Limburg, and Wim van der Donk, the gouverneur from Noord-Brabant. So, if you want...
About what? About what?
About Elat.
You know Elat?
Yeah.
Does anybody know Elat down here? Explain
Herman,
Elat. Explain Elat.
Elat is the innovation triangle between originally invented by Philips. Philips together with EMEC to have the core corner points, Aachen, Eindhoven and Leuven together to develop an innovation strategy. And in fact, this is the region, I don't know if you know that, but this is the region where the most patents of Europe are produced. Question, yeah. So this is an innovative region. And the row was about that Herman Reinders thought that all the money went to Eindhoven and that he could get nothing for his Hasselt-Genk region. So that's the question. And of course, Uli can go from one side to the other and could have lots of fun. Of course, the artists could go also. All the region is very nice what you do. But why would you want to call that a region? Why do you want that?
Well, I can start to give an answer because, you know, first of all, the artist made it very clear, and I like the presentation a lot for that, that they actually, well, first of all, it's not problematized, it's just there. You go to the other place and it's part of your world, and at some stage you may even find that it's not just interesting what people do in Maastricht, but also what the people in the sea mine do, or perhaps you know already, because your world becomes bigger, and that is part what you're interested in. You also notice that actually to get from Aachen to Hasselt, if you don't have a car, will take you more time than it would take to get to, God knows, to Berlin. Because, you know, all our traffic networks are still national. And especially, I mean, somebody said it already, in this country it's ridiculously concentrated in one town. So you can't get from Hasselt to Turnhout, except if you go to Brussels first, or to Antwerp. So there are very, very obvious reasons why you would have to have a sense of, you know, a different kind of network that is nothing to do with national boundaries, which allows the universities of Eindhoven and Genk and Maastricht and Aachen to work together, and for the students to actually go from one place to the other without having to sort of commute or hitchhike, which of course is no longer possible either. So I think there are absolutely very, very clear reasons. Now, the point is, how do you actually construct an argument for making that happen? You can try to do that by emphasizing the economic links. That is a very traditional, very ordinary way of doing that. I think some people made the point as well, that these economic links are not given or so strong in this part. It's different, for example, from the corridor Antwerp-Rotterdam, where there is, despite the competition, there is a kind of connection. In other words, you have to find for other ways of making that argument, because there is a clear need for a stronger connection. I mean, that is how I see it.
I think the good thing about the contributions, especially from the people who actually work and live here, is in contrary to we are only visiting here, is that you actually are a region. You don't want to be one, you are. That's what you prove. The problem is what's in your way. So there's the easy perspective, and that's why I liked your idea of the green. Although I thought it was very limited in its size, is that the ecological structure doesn't care less about. I mean, in money it cares a lot about national policies, but in real, if you just go walking around, it doesn't care at all. And the same goes for people. But there are boundaries. Some of the boundaries, as you are physical. We don't invest enough in this infrastructure that's cross borders. Why not? That's a decision, and it's very easy. The only thing is, and it's got nothing to do with the competitiveness between Van der Donk and his counterpart on the Flemish side. No, it's only a quick decision. National politics in the Netherlands, out of nothing. I'm very sorry, there was no real analysis behind it. They drew up in their coalition accord saying, we have to invest more in our cross-national infrastructure when it comes to rail. Nobody knew where it came from, but we're doing it right now. The fun thing about it is that it actually works. So if you want politics to decide, you have to have your analysis in order and actually listen to how this region works. If you're not the only ones, and I suppose you're not, otherwise Hans wouldn't have brought us all here to Hasselt. Yep. So if you're not the only ones, then it's actually a collection of all those stories, which is far more important than all our reflections, all those stories that can actually convince politics to make better decisions on limiting or minimizing the borders in the formal way.
But you said one interesting thing, which is, I think, striking, and I think it will become even more important when we sort of develop that notion, formalizing the informal. So there is an informal region here. Yeah. There is, yes, but it's not formalized because the formal structures, in a certain sense, work nation-wise. Yeah? They're crumbling down, so that they have to reorient themselves. So there is here some sort of informal energy, which can be formalized. But at the same time, as soon as you formalize the informal, there's also a danger involved, because it becomes a part of politics.
Yeah, but the informal is always stronger. Okay. So every time you formalize a little informality, the informal grows bigger than any formality can. So okay. The informal will always stay. Okay. But the problem is, I don't really think it should be a goal to formalize the informal. No, I think you should connect both. Okay. So at least make it possible that the informal actually influences to a max the formal. And the informal in the sense how you can look upon this region, because I don't really know it that well, so I have to be very careful. You seem to have studied it much better. I really had to find my way around here.
That's one of the secrets of the region.
Is that there's a lot of informality and a lot of functionally on this regional level.
Yeah, Gerrit. Yeah.
Maybe I can add something about the informal, because I see you're ready to add something to the conversation. I think the informal and the unknown, you refer to the unknown, that is quite interesting to me. And talking about formalizing the informal, I do think that there should be a kind of interconnection between the two, and it's also important to stress the degree of formalization we need, because if we, and that is a bit of my answer to your question, do we want to be a region? Even in the artistic team, there are lots of questions about that. If it's too formalized, if it really becomes a region, you should think of the outer borders again. We're trying to cross-border between all these regions, and we will initiate the outer borders again. At a certain moment, I remember a discussion, I thought, well, am I connected to Maastricht? But if there is a kind of Euregio and we have a defined border, then Leuven is a foreign city for me, which is ridiculous, of course, at a certain point. Yeah. So it's really on the edge somewhere.
It's a paradox. Your microphone is. It's a paradox of boundaries we already spoke about. Yeah. The borders in a certain sense, you know, your source of energy is partly produced by the borders, because you can cross the border from Aachen to Heerlen. You have different sort of organization, and the theater of Aachen can do things in Heerlen which they can't do in Cologne, because it's a different system, and that makes it interesting. So in a certain sense, we should keep the borders.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's a problem, because we can always, as people, we can be many things at the same time. Yeah. You know, I'm German, but I'm also Dutch, I'm also Flemish, I also I'm a bit of a Londoner. It's perfectly possible if you live in different cities. You can be a person from Antwerp and one from Amsterdam. It's perfectly possible. Aachen can be both part of the Euregion and part of the Rhineland, even if it's actually the Maasland we now know. I mean, it's perfectly possible doing that. I think it's just, you know, it actually enriches us.
Yes, your opportunity. Yeah.
We've been thinking about reconnecting all these arguments you've proposed here. So if you reconnect these dots, like we have a problem with demographics. You know, people are getting older. We have sort of a language barrier between these three regions. Like I don't speak French, so I hardly ever go to Liège. What's really connecting people is getting to know other people. So we have got our inspiration for a new concept from the Chinese government. Maybe we should propose a 3 or 4 children policy, where people must have sex partners from this might be in...
It's a new population policy. It's a totally new concept of population policy.
Well, I mean, there have been precedents, of course.
Yeah. But perhaps I'm a little bit old-fashioned. But if you want a real region, then it's not so much about formality; it's about informality. It's how the way you act, how the way you're doing it, how you what kitchen you have, what food you eat, what language you, what books you read, etc., etc. If you have got a region with various languages, with various food, with various ideas, with various informalities, then you have, I think, a hard job to do. It's almost.
That's one of the curious paradoxes of this region. It's exactly the fact that there is a difference which unites this region. It's exactly the fact of this status already for centuries of an in-between region, yeah? which you know, if I may add to that discussion, because I think that's a very interesting paradoxical thing. People enjoy the fact that they are part of an in-between region, which in a certain sense is not a central part of either the Netherlands or Germany or the Francophone region, but which in a certain sense, you know, can keep people free floating around. And it's exactly that in-between situation which is, I think, delivering the kind of energy we're looking for.
Is that so?
Yes. I'm wondering whom we are trying to convince.
Sure.
I think
Luc, we're trying to convince Luc.
Yeah. Because I think most of us are already convinced that this process that has started with the Euregion is a positive process. And we have a benefit. We are talking to each other. We are discussing in a fundamental way. There are young people working together, crossing the borders, and they make new concepts and so on. This is working already. This doesn't need a map. This doesn't need borders. This is another discussion, I think. And if we are trying to make a competition to Cologne or to Brussels, this is a completely other discussion than this process that's already working. And I think we shouldn't mix it up, personally.
Okay, but there is, yes, a question from the audience.
I made a study about the Eurasian to elaborate a pedagogical toolkit for the schools here, and I learned something about the different perspectives of regions and cities and the nation state. That is what you said. So we should see that the states, the cities and the regions are very old actors in Europe, and the nation is a very young actor together with Europe. So you have two things to combine, the cities and the region, and the nation states and Europe. And in this perspective, you see that the Euroregion is a very old cultural landscape and a new border region. And this should be more elaborated. And in your focus, I hear the intermediate region, and that is what it was all the time. Yeah. Since the Romans, you have this cultural borders between the Francophone and the Germanophone region. That is the potential. Yeah. I know from a new book about the Rhineland as Rhineland als Wiege Europas, they say that it was the main power of the Rhineland to be next to the other cultures, because this region was very innovative. And the innovatives are coming from the cultural differences. So I believe it's not the question to be a region. The question is to have a new map, of the Eurregion to use all the potentials we have.
You're right when you speak about Aachen. You're right if you speak about Maastricht. But Hasselt has never been in conflict zone. It's always been in Limburg part. It's always connected to it wasn't part of the Liège.
I think the people in Hasselt can also decide to want to be part of something or not. Yeah.
Okay, you're out. You may go. Yeah.
Can I say? I think this is very interesting what you say. This is an anecdote, but perhaps it gives some extra depth to this. My grandfather, who came from a small town in Germany, just outside the Dutch border, grew up before the Second World War, even before the First World War, memorized when he lived that in his town, people didn't know if somebody was Dutch or German, because everybody was actually speaking some kind of Low German dialect or Lower Saxon dialect, and there was virtually no difference between the people who were living either side of the border. Now, today, that is a very clear border, because the Germans on the German side don't speak Lower Saxon, they speak High German, and the Dutch speak, of course, no Low Saxon either, they speak Standard Dutch. So there is now a linguistic border that it's not very long ago, only 50 years ago, did not exist. So let's just state this, that the constructions of borders as mental and as real borders are relatively new. The nation states, as you say, well, the Dutch nation state is one of the oldest in Europe, of course. That is also why, all sorts of planning systems are very, very firmly developed, but all other nation states are very young. That's one thing. Second thing is, why do we need a region? Why do we need the map? We don't need it. We need it we need it perhaps as a mental construction to have a political instrument. And that is where I absolutely agree with Henk. If you don't have that map, you can't influence political agendas. Otherwise, you get another political agenda, which is fine. But for example, in this country, there is the Belgicist political agenda, which means that all the roads go to Brussels. If you want that all the roads go to Brussels, then of course you just don't need to draw another map. If you think that's a good idea, fine. But if you're actually interested in the nightlife in Aachen, because it's actually nearer, and because these people give you the argument why it's perhaps fun to go to Aachen once, then you have to draw another map.
Okay. Yeah?
Maybe it has something to do with branding. I think that's a very important thing that's really missing. You know, there have been lots of research projects that try to put a brand on this region in one way or another, and the names that have been given were not very distinctive. You know, like the word Euroregion or Euregio, I think exists in 5 or 6 different contexts and regions, and so it's not distinctive, but there is a feeling, and there needs to be some branding, and I think there has to be a political process that.
Yeah, but that's where I think the formal and the informal in a certain sense, because that's where the interesting. Yeah. It's about the interaction of the formal and the informal.
There's
And
a lot of bottom-up work. You know, like
yeah.
companies in Aachen trying to promote the area even as a technological sweet spot. So
Yeah.
so to
But where the informal is objecting against the formal is where the formal presents itself without taking into account the informal. So we have a policy of the Euroregion. The notion of the Euroregion is a strong notion because there is a policy related to that. But in a certain sense, that is developed apart from the informal. So that's why the informal doesn't connect itself to the formal. So the challenge is, in a certain sense, and that's what you're all expressing, the challenge is to find a way in which the informal and the formal can come together.
Well, it has something to do with mental barriers. You know, like me as a normal citizen, I see them above. You know, those politicians up there. And this is they're not open. They don't have open doors. But it's not like that. You know, that's why we had this sofa thing, and where we discovered, we ran through open doors, so we can just encourage anyone talk to your local politician.
But I did in the Netherlands is the old country where planning is institutionalized for decades or even ages. It's become quite complex. So I did with Adriaan Geuze a research on the landscape in the Randstad. And this is about the connection between the facts on the ground, being it formal or informal, and a way how to address them. And we actually, when I heard the discussion, I wanted to bring out the map because it actually illustrates a way of approaching a region. There were 14 ways, policy ways on a national level how to address landscape in the Randstad. And Adriaan and I walked and biked, and we couldn't find the borders between one policy document and the other. So the facts on the ground actually did not match the policy. Secondly, they didn't cover it. I live in the center of The Hague. He lives in Rotterdam. Friends of us in Amsterdam. The landscape of the Randstad starts at our front doors. But policy is borderized. The landscape started at the border of the city. So what we did a different research by ourselves in our informal collaboration, saying, what are all the issues when it comes to the landscape? And this is not only about ecology, but also about scale, about the history, about way it's used, the cultural approach, businesses that are actually developing there. And we drew up, we called them interests, because they all had an interest in this landscape construct. And we drew them all up, and out of this, a new narrative of the landscape emerged on a map. And it started at my front door and at his front door, and I could actually scale up or move out or take the train or the car or my bike or walk. And all of a sudden, this landscape of the Randstad, in all these interests, being economic, culturally, ecologically, became so tactile. And this can never be a policy document. For goodness sake, I'm glad it can never be a policy document. But it's also not really informal, because I have it on the wall. I can actually print it out. I can communicate with it. So it's much more formal than real informality. And it covers the whole Randstad, from my front door to het Veenweidelandschap. I'm very sorry, I can't translate that. So it makes it very tactile. So there are ways of language, of actually tactilizing your region that crosses borders and connects formal with informality.
Yeah.
If we have the opinion that a map is useful, I have a map of the Eurasia. It's 10 years old. What have to be changed that it would become better? I have it in my car.
You have to connect it to other maps of the same people. So that you have a map is nice. But if you can connect it, have an alliance with other people who have got your same map, then it becomes a map which is more.
But could I also, because of reasons of time, because we're running into 10 o'clock, people have to get home. Some of them are coming from. Yes, exactly. What is striking about this discussion is, well, first the increasing importance of the informal. Yeah, I mean, maps are becoming something which is not only political, economically, but they have to be lived in a certain sense. Yeah, so in a certain sense, maps have to be representing something which is lived on an everyday scale. So the everyday is becoming important. The informal is becoming much more important as an organizing device. That's one thing, which is, if you talk about the layers, and how the layers interact with one another, well, one thing is sure about that, there is an everyday which is in a certain sense organizing the different layers. And this is becoming more and more important. Then the second is your suggestion about, okay, so trying to combine the formal and the informal in such a way that they can strengthen one another. They're not destroying one another or ignoring one another, they're strengthening one another. And one way to do that is your maps of interest. Yeah, so there is a challenge to start a mapping exercise in this region, which is not reflecting national policies, but which is reflecting, in a certain sense, the way in which people live this region, in all its sort of multi-layered functionality, identities, etc., etc. So would that be a way, I'm looking at Hein to sort of finish this discussion for the time being, because it also connects to our, this is also about, finding the new connections, isn't it? This is a way to end this discussion, Hein, and then take this up to the next level, because I think this is delivering the ingredients for a nice experiment. Presenting this region as a region which is doing that, actually.
Yeah, well, thank you for opening that door for me, because my first question will be like, okay, I really would like to invite, of course, you and you to do this with me, with the organizations that made this all possible. This is the idea. This was the exercise first. This was the exercise to get a little glimpse of what is happening here. We still have to make like a conclusion out of it, but we're hoping to get there very soon. And from this, we hope to go further. Maybe we meet again then in another form, but this was the exercise to trying to make a map. And if I heard it correctly, we are going to make a lot of maps. And with this conclusion, I would like to thank you, but first I'd like to thank you. I'm looking at Luc if he wants to assist me for thanking the gentleman, but before that happens, I turn to you again. We're hoping to post as many things on the internet as possible from this, and hope to announce a sequel, if I be. But give us some time to gather all the information. if you have something that you want to share already, contact us and we'll take it with us.